Welcome, Degens, far and wide, to another edition of the Degen Docs. I am your host, the OG Degen Doc himself, Sebastian Fearon, and together we are the Degen Docs, and that is two healthcare professionals that are looking at football from a little bit of a different perspective. We've studied injury in football our entire life, and we look at the game a little bit differently. We love football. We also love making money off of football. So it is not your normal doctor visit. We're going to talk all things AFC East preview. We're talking fantasy football, free agency breakdown, and of course, giving you some of our best bets and some action to take home with you folks. So we hope that you enjoy it. This episode of the AFC East edition of the Degen Docs on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 325 times your entry with their new Pick 8. Sign up with promo code SGPNDOC. That is all caps, all one word, SGPNDOC, to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPNDOC. We are also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right. How are we doing, brother? None other than Mr. Professor Locks himself, my brother in degeneracy, Derek Bennett. How we doing tonight, brother?
We're doing well, dude. We're doing great. We're recording this on the eve of Independence Day, 4th of July.
Yes.
And I got a question for you. I was doing some prep work so we're having some people over tomorrow for the 4th, and
Okay.
I like I said, I had to do some prep work. So, do you know what spatchcocking is?
No, you do know we're live, right? And we're recording. Spatchcocking. Wow. Okay. We're gonna go with. I'm assuming this. All right. Let me workshop this. There's got to be something. I'm going like 1800s, 1700s. Spatchcocking. That's got to be the underground name for cockfighting.
Not even close.
Okay.
I guess you're on the right track as far as the animal goes.
All right.
But spatchcocking is when you take a chicken and basically you split it like down the backbone and so you can lay it open. So then you can put it on the grill.
I have actually heard of that. I was like, why the fuck have I heard that word before? Like spatchcocking, but I was not thinking. I guess I was thinking chickens, just in a more degenerate way, I guess. But
evident, yes.
Look, folks, you all look at all the information you can learn. Now you can tell your friends. Nice bar trivia. Hey, you have ever spatchcocked before? I think that maybe not the best pickup line, but
spatchcocked 4 times already today. So
we're not even 5 minutes in, and we made it up there. All right. So yes, speaking of the 4th, I heard that we have a little somebody to give us a message here for your 4th of July festivities. No, it is not the entire AFC East. It is Mr. Jason Pierre-Paul, Giants legend. So most people refer to Smokey the Bear when they talk about fire safety and prevention. In the football world, we're talking about Jason Pierre-Paul. My guy absolutely blew his fingers to smithereens in the prime of his Giants career. And as you can see, be careful, folks. Fireworks are awesome, but also can blow your fucking hand off. That is the medical diagnosis there, that his hand is fucked up. So just be careful. I know this is obviously gonna be like we said, we're recording it early before don't worry, in season we'll be going live, we'll be catching up with you, but we wanted to bank some episodes, make sure you guys had enough content before we jump into it. But just be safe out there, whether it's for the 4th of July or any other holiday of fireworks, be safe out there. And speaking of the 4th of July, can we just take a second to, remember, maybe cheers. I will propose a toast to those OG Americans who, back in like 1776, 75, were fucking marching, American Revolution. Right. So all right, first of all, we'll cheers to them. But I'm talking like George Washington motherfuckers, Alexander Hamilton, I recently did training where I had to like do a battle analysis brief and read all this history and stuff. And like, so Battle of Yorktown, the last really official battle of the American Revolution. Guess how long these motherfuckers marched, bro? They were in New York and they had to march to essentially west and east of Richmond to the coast down in what we know as Virginia, right? Well, it was
Yeah.
Virginia, but
Yeah.
took them 2 to 3 fucking months. Could you imagine?
That's nuts.
Just to march and like walk there, and like and at that time the army was running out of funds. That a lot of them weren't getting paid. Like they were worried about their like debt. You couldn't even get paid. And now, like we right now in the current military bitch about a 12-mile ruck march. You want to talk about fucking dude? Like I can't remember. I think it was like 1,700 miles.
Let's just do that for 50 straight days.
Yeah, right. Like, hey, man, you're gonna be gone for a while. Oh, really? We're really like, yeah, you're gonna be walking for 3 months straight to the battle, and then whatever the fuck happens there, good luck. So,
yeah, if you make it through the battle, you still have to go back.
Or if you don't die of tuberculosis or something out there. But dude, so I was just thinking about that. Like, obviously proud American, thankful for what they did, but that's crazy, man. 3 months to just march to shout out to the French too. The French get a lot of shit, but they did help us out. Their French Navy did help us out there. So we do call the French bitches most of the time because of World War I, II. But for the American Revolution on tomorrow, 1st of July.
Thank God I was born in 1994, I guess. But
I would say 20.
I don't think I could have made it back in the 1700s. Walking 2 months,
dude.
Go, what now we can do that in an hour and a half.
Yeah, go take a plane and yes. you imagine like talking to somebody back then, like you go back in time, you're like, yeah, that journey was long, 3 months. Like, yeah, bro, I did that in like an hour and a half, like 2 hours. Explaining then George Washington probably like, you motherfucker.
I mean, sometimes it takes 2 months to go through TSA, but other than that, like,
all right.
What are we talking about tonight?
We are talking about a couple of Patriots. Okay. And now we're moving on to more New England Patriots.
There we go.
Nice little transition there. So yeah, we were talking about the new. What's up?
That's not a Patriot.
I mean, in his own right, he is the definition of a Patriot. I think he's got more game than anyone on this offense.
That is true. He is living the American dream.
Yes, we paid a nice little homage to Mr. Bill Belichick. He's obviously enjoying his offseason with a female younger than us, I think, 24, right? Or something like that. That's insane, dude. I saw some memes or some tweets about like, could you imagine if I can't remember. I don't know if this chick is a Boston chick or what, but like imagine she's like from like New York or Miami or something like that. And you think you're done with Bill Belichick and you're the dad, and now he comes and dates your daughter. This man has just been living in your nightmares. Like,
my.
Anyone other than a Patriots fan, that dad is in more trouble than we think. So
no, you have to think like Bill's been doing this for quite some time. Like, what else has he been missing out on over the last 30, 40 years? Like,
are we gonna see Bill?
He is just now living outside of the coaching life, and
so
he's doing it well.
His first step, date a 24-year-old. Maybe he goes back to college for a frat lap. He joins fraternity. Maybe he's a fraternity dad, or just he's a pledge. Bill Belichick, the pledge.
Hey, I mean, he's kind of. I've seen a couple pictures of him or videos with him walking out of some sort of Airbnb or some house that's not his. Dude's yoked.
Did Jack the walk of shame? How to get Jack for the walk of shame pictures?
I don't know.
All right. So let's get into this here. Let's talk football, what we came here for. So first loss, obviously, head coach Bill Belichick, which is a notable loss to this New England Patriots team. He's just been there for so long. He's been their identity. When there's years when you couldn't think of, maybe you didn't have the biggest names on the roster, you just had to trust that Bill Belichick was going to get that team right, at least to where they needed to be. Now, obviously, when Brady left, things kind of hit the wall, but for most of his career. They also lost starting quarterback who lost his job, regained his job, lost his job, Mac Jones, McCorkle, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ezekiel Elliott, who led the team in rushing last year, Ezekiel Elliott, and was like
Yeah.
5th receiving. He's gone. Devonta Parker retired. Mike Gesicki's with the Bengals, who I think is going to be a sneaky guy in fantasy that we'll talk about in a couple weeks. Offensive tackle Trent Brown, also with the Bengals. Another offensive tackle, Malk Wilson, who's a good player, linebacker, and C.J. Jackson, who's also kind of bounced around a little bit from injury. Then some additions. Okay. We got Antonio Gibson from the Commandos, Vikings wide receiver, former wide receiver KJ Osborne, tight end Austin Hooper, Okafor. He's coming from the Steelers, or did he go somewhere else?
Yeah, he's an old Steeler.
Yeah, from the Lurs. Josh Uche, former Michigan man. Sionis Takitaki, good Bills or Browns linebacker. And then, of course, the draft, the future, hopefully for them, Drake May from North Carolina, and Jalen Polk, who's got himself, looks like he's slotted to be in the starting lineup already, year one. So what are your instant takeaways from this team that went just a lowly 4-13 last year?
Yeah. No, I think it'll be rather interesting on the defensive side. I don't think the offensive side still has much firepower there. I think when you think of New England, you think of stout defenses, and then an offense, that really since Tom Brady left, that it's just there's not much there. When Mac Jones first came into the league, he had a solid, I think it was his rookie year. But other than that, like they have struggled every week basically to get anything going on offense, and whether that's quarterback play or the weapons that they have around them, it's just been a struggle. And yes, they've added a couple pieces, but I can't necessarily say that it's anything game changing week to week.
I don't know what this team's offensive identity is going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't even know who they're going to trot out for quarterback yet. Now we're going to talk about that a little bit later. All signs are kind of pointing for Brissett to get the start. I think that's probably best case for Drake May in his career development. But like you were saying, stout got the potential to be a stout defense again, but usually you at least know what they're going to do on the offensive side of the ball. Right. Looking at this roster, man, I'm not too fond of their running back room or their wide receiver room. So it's kind of, and you got potentially Jacoby Brissett out there. Like, sure. I don't really know what the offense is going to look like you were mentioning there. So
yeah, and really, I mean, like we put in the takeaways, like their offensive line probably got worse. Like you mentioned, Okorafor coming over from the Steelers, like he struggled to get into their starting lineup. And the Steelers have had offensive line issues for years. So he's slated right now to be their starting left tackle. Do you really want a career backup to be your starting left tackle, bringing in a rookie quarterback? Like, that's not preferred in my opinion. And you lose a couple other pieces. We'll talk a little bit about Cole Strange and his situation here in a little bit, but like he's beat up. And like we've said, like they just haven't had great weapons there for quite some time. So, I think, like you said, it's probably starting Brissett is best for Drake May, because neither one of them most likely are going to have success with this offense. But
it's definitely not an ideal situation. You talk about situations to set up, not the ideal rookie situation or any quarterback, but at least Brissett is a guy who's played through some not so favorable situations. So let's talk about those big injuries. So we got 3 big injuries we want to speak about here. First one is Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver there for the New England Patriots, was one of their top starting receivers last year. He tore his ACL in late October 29th. So ACL, anterior cruciate ligament, is a major stabilizing ligament of the knee. It requires season-ending surgery, about 10 to 12 months recovery time. When we talk about recovery time, we're talking about return to sport, return to the field, return to actually playing the game of football. He's got about 10 and a half months. So, where are we looking with Kendrick Bourne as far as expectations with him in that offense next year?
Yeah, I mean, I would be very concerned early on in the season, like you said. Usually these ACLs are at minimum a 10-month return, and he's right there, kind of at that 10 and a half month timeline week 1. So when we say 10 months, like that's when they're just getting back into football. Like that's not, starting week 1. I mean, he's just now running routes. He's just now, doing things out on the field where he's prepping. Like, he's not going to be doing much in training camp. He's not going to be most likely ready for week 1 even. He may not touch the field until week 4, week 5, something like that. So, and even then, with those ACLs, usually running backs and wide receivers have a little bit prolonged timeline as it is. So, second half of the season, we'll see where the New England Patriots are. Maybe he can pick it up then, but the first half of the season, I don't see him doing a whole lot, to be honest.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about some ACLs a little bit in the later in the episode. But yeah, I mean, research shows it can take up to 2 years for normal movement to come back. It's not just a physical thing; it's a psychological thing. Last time they were out running routes, their knee gave out on them. It takes time. You can't be thinking that much when you're on the football field with other professional athletes. And it's a situation where Kendrick Bourne right now has KJ Osborne behind him on the depth chart. I don't know if I can confidently say that Kendrick Bourne is that much better of a wide receiver than KJ Osborne when they're healthy. And now one's coming off an ACL tear and one's not. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, really that a lot of that wide receiver room for the Patriots is kind of a crapshoot there. Let's talk about Matt Judon on the defensive side of the ball. Somebody who I think has a little bit better of an outlook. He had a biceps tear on 1 October, so early October last season. It's about when you tear your biceps, so biceps muscle tear requires surgery, season-ending surgery as well to put that muscle back into place. We're talking about completely torn, right, grade 3. So it takes about 10 to 11 months expected recovery timeline. And he's got about 11 months to the start of the season. So how are we feeling about Judon?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I would say I probably have a little bit less concern with Judon than Bourne. But at the same time, like, will he be ready week 1 to go full bore every snap? I don't know that.
Yeah.
Again, we're kind of right on that timeline or expected return timeline to week 1. So if it was me, I would probably ease him into the season. And again, the New England Patriots aren't expected to do much. And it's kind of hard to say, hey, let's give you an extra couple weeks and see how things progress. But at the same time, like, at that week 10, we're just now getting the strength back into that biceps. We're not in football shape. He's been off for basically a year at this point. And especially with that pass rush, or in those pass rushers, those rips and swims and all those kind of other different moves that they use to get past offensive linemen, like, they're swinging arms around all the time. So I would be a little bit more concerned, those first couple weeks. But on the defensive side, usually we can sub in and out a little bit easier and put them on a snap count. So
hand fighting is very important for defensive linemen, but he should. I do expect him to be out there early on in the season. It's just how much production we're gonna get out of him, and they're gonna. I mean, they really do need him. I mean, he's been their kind of premier pass rusher. He's been one of their best players on the defense. So we'll see. That's somebody that you do not.
Really saw that. I saw a dip in their defense last year when he went out. Like, he is the real leader on their defense. He's
a stud.
He is a stud.
All right, here's the one. Here's the one that is a little bit more less known, I should say, and kind of surprising here. We just got some interesting kind of updates. So Cole Strange, starting offensive guard for the New England Patriots, he went out with a knee injury in Week 15 against the Kansas City Chiefs last season. That's 17 December of last season. Not a lot of people kind of wrote it off because the Patriots were so bad. Why does it matter? Well, it's come out recently. The Patriots keep a lot of things close to the vest, which I'm hoping post-Belichick era that will not be as much because it's really annoying from an injury standpoint. But it looks like recently it came out that he has a patellar tendon tear, which is a pretty serious injury. Your patellar tendon connects your patella, which is your kneecap, to your tibial shaft, your tibial tuberosity there. So it really is a connection point from the quad as well. So it, again, is a major injury, not quite as long as an ACL, about 8 to 10 months of recovery timeline, but still a decent amount. And he's only looking about 8.5 months. And the last update from head coach Gerard Mayo, he said that, he's somebody who right now he would almost call month to month. And there's a situation where he may not even be ready until like the midway point of the season. Right. So I think they're acting as if like he's, almost definitely not going to be ready for the start of the season, but almost, will we get him by the midway point? So how do you think this affects this team?
Yeah, it again, they've already lost a couple offensive linemen to free agency and those kind of things. But yeah, I think we've talked about offensive linemen and knee injuries on a couple past episodes. And a lot of times we think of knee injuries with running backs and wide receivers and quarterbacks and guys out in open space. But with offensive and defensive linemen, there's just a lot of weight. There's a lot of force. There's a lot of pressure.
All that
And
stress on that new
there's
10.
a ton of stress being placed on those knees. And, I think just for their offense in general, like their offensive line is probably in the bottom half as it is, and all of a sudden you take your starting offensive guard off of that line, like it's going to be a tough spot
Yeah.
for the Patriots, but most of the year. And I'm not saying anything wild and crazy here. I'm not trying to make any takes here, but I think Cole Strange is probably a bigger loss than what we are giving it credit for. Like you said, the Patriots were 4-13 last year.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of got swept under the rug. Well, it may be 6-8 weeks before he's back on the field.
No, I think we can't. I know a lot of shows won't do this, which I think is, a disservice to understanding the game fully, but an offensive line, like line play, is just so important to the game of football. And, Cole Strange is a starter on that line. He's one of their better linemen on a struggling and a kind of, from the looks of it on paper, is a very haphazardous, like, thrown together offensive line. So yeah. I think that's going to be a huge part. And this also brings me to my first fantasy takeaway. One of the guys I'm looking to fade on this New England Patriots team is their number one ranked guy right now. And that is Ramondre Stevenson, going at RB19, typical ADP. He's going around guys like David Montgomery and Jameer White, who I would take over him 10 out of 10 times. Not only has Ramondre really struggled to stay healthy, he's never really had that breakout season. Again, Ezekiel Elliott, old-ass Ezekiel Elliott, led the team in rushing and was fifth on receiving. That's just a shame. So I don't know why everyone keeps projecting. I know a lot of people were on him last year. He had all the opportunity in the world. Well, look what happened last year. We didn't get a lot, and I think their offensive line has gotten worse. Right. Yeah, so this is not somebody, again, I would take guys like Jameer White and Montgomery all day over him. Montgomery's in a way better offense, and Jameer White is also in a better situation where they want to run the ball and they can run the ball. So, some other guys, who are some guys, anyone you would actually take on this Patriots team in fantasy?
It's really hot. Kind of tough here. I would probably look to go with Demario Douglas, if any at all, just because like we kind of talked about, Kendrick Bourne's beat up going into the season. They got to throw it to somebody, and he's probably their number one option.
He led the team in receiving last year.
So. Yeah, so I think I would probably go Demario Douglas.
Pub Douglas there. I think that's. It's right. It's not an appealing offense, so it's hard to really buy a lot in fantasy. I think Demario Douglas going around wide receiver 79 right now for a potential wide receiver 1.
Yeah, Jalen Polk is an option. He's kind of slotted in as that 3 wide receiver right now, probably 2 going into the season. Yeah. So rookie might catch fire. You never know, but it's tough.
No, another guy I think I would look for is Hunter Henry. I think he was second on the team in receiving. I just think they're going to need, whether it's Brissett or May, rookie quarterback, or Brissett likes to use the tight end as well. I just think they're going to need him. I think they really are. Like he's shown he's capable as a playmaker, and I just really think they're going to need to go to him and feed him targets. So I do like Hunter Henry, also Pup Douglas. The other guy who I like on this team, which will lead me into my first best bet, you mentioned him, and that is Mr. Jalen Polk. I've, watching them at Washington, those trio of wide receivers really intrigued me. They made some amazing catches, contested, over the shoulder. I know we were pretty high on Penix and his accuracy, but man, like you talked about, he has a great situation here, right? So, I think I'm going to take a dart throw on in the most rookie receiving yards market, and I'm going to go Jalen Polk at 40-1. So plus,
Okay.
40-1. So I know we talked about this market with my Giants, with Malik Neighbors. He's my chalk play at 6-1. But actually, I've got a couple in this division. I'm going to take some darts at, this Patriots seems tough as far as I think they're priced pretty accurately in the market. They're basically, the favorite to be the worst team and things like that. So, I think I'm going to go Polk here. Give me that dart throw at 41 at most rookie receiving yards. And then on the a different end of the spectrum, I'm going to take a chalky play, and it's Jacoby Brissett to be the week 1 starter at minus 300. So if that tells you how I feel about the New England Patriots, I got a minus 300 and a 40-1 for you. What do you got there?
Yeah, no, I think Drake May's going to struggle. Whenever he ends up getting on the field, it doesn't sound like it's going to be week 1.
Yep.
Usually, if you have a starting quarterback start, or eventually start, it's not going to be the first 2-3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see him getting in until week 4, week 5, something like that. And, looking back at last year, Mac Jones, I think he only threw for like 2,100 yards. And like we kind of talked about, he kind of started and then he lost his job. Then he got it back and then he started and it was kind of all over the place. Offensive line's probably worse. I'm going to take Drake May under 2,400 passing yards at minus 110.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I'm going to take one, I think this is where it has to be. And I think New England probably ends up with the fewest wins. They probably end up with that first overall pick next April in the draft, just because I really just don't see where they're going to get too many wins as we're going through the rest of this division. The rest of the division is pretty solid.
Yeah.
So, there's 6 probable losses as it is. So yeah, I'll take New England with the fewest wins in the NFL for plus 340.
Yeah. No, I mean, I thought about that as well. I didn't want to lay some of that chalk, and obviously it's a plus 340 play, but they are the favorites there. So, I if I had to play it, I think that would be the team I would play it, but they're just tough. Like they won, they were 4-13, and I don't know if they got better. No. So at the end of the day, I really can't fault you there. So 4-13 last
Mayo's
year.
Got his work cut out for sure.
Who is it?
I said Mayo's got his work cut out.
And rookie head coach, young head coach too. I think we didn't even talk about that, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a tough situation to come in and try to rally the troops, fill in the steps of Bill Belichick. I mean, you see it in college all the time. It's always hard to be the guy who replaces the guy, right? We just saw it with Coach Leach last year with Zach Arnett, and he didn't really get a chance. So, that's a really even makes the play there even better.
Right.
Their win total is 4.5, juice to the over at minus 160 and under at plus 135. I would almost, like Derek did, if you were going to play the under at plus 135, I would just take the plus 340, the least wins. I don't think anybody else is really going to, Panthers maybe can get 4 or something like that, but I would almost rather just take the plus 340 for the lowest wins there. So the under. All right. That is wrapping up with those New England Patriots. And before we move on to the New York Football Jets, I want to tell you about the latest episode of SGP Stories. That is right. For all you Patreon folks there on the Sports Gambling Podcast, Patreon, the guys have started a new series called Forensic Files, where they do a deep dive onto things like the Bobby Petrino motorcycle accident that cost him his job. It's a fun new series they're doing over there, basically deep diving into sports topics that deserve a little bit more time than the 5 minutes that they talk about them on the air. So some fun stuff over there. I'm pretty sure Colby got into his outfit and brought out his neck brace for that one. So you got to make sure you want to check that out. Also, look, dog days of summer, but not for the WNBA Gambling Podcast. Terrell and Scott have started off red hot with their locks. I know I've personally tailed some. They won me a nice little bit of cash because, look, let's be honest, there's not a lot to watch on TV. I know I've been taking up the little fake football the soccer. But for those who are basketball heads, make sure you check those guys out at the WNBA podcast. All right, moving along to the New York Football Jets. Like that picture there where Mr. Aaron Rodgers just came out looking like a badass with the American flag and everything on him. But that quickly ended, as we all saw last season.
It was a hell of a start to that Monday night.
It was. Those first 5 minutes, man, those Jets fans had to be feeling electric.
Oh, yeah. Running out of the tunnel, he was jacked.
Hey,
and
then
I was 4 plays
on 9/11, the anniversary of 9/11. Like, it had potential to be something. It wasn't anything, but it had potential.
It did.
No, but all right, let's talk about their losses here. You can see a long list here. New York Football Jets, 7-10 last year, lost guys like Zach Wilson, the MILF hunter himself, who just got married, I think. So congratulations to him,
really?
putting his MILF days behind him. I think it was him, wasn't it? It might not have been him. I don't know, but whatever. White quarterback.
I think you're right on that one. But hey, Aaron Rodgers lost his buddy Randall Cobb.
I know. All right, Matt. I thought he was part of the package deal. Is Cobb a free agent?
Yes, he is. Well, still free agent. Corey Davis is too.
Might be back. Maybe. Corey Davis, man, he, coming out of Western Kentucky, he looked like a stud in Tennessee for a second there, and just all went downhill from there. CJ, who's your mama? Uzoma, CJ Uzoma, went to the Philadelphia Eagles. You remember that TJ Hushmanzada?
Hushmanzada.
Yeah. But Mekhi Beckham is gone. Dwayne Brown, gone. Connor McGovern, gone. Laken Tomlinson, gone. That entire offensive line, gone. I mean, they were, to be fair, trash. So, not fair. But then a lot of loss on the defense here. Bryce Huff, Carl Lawson, Quentin Jefferson, Bryce Hall, Jordan Whitehead, John Franklin Myers. That's a decent amount on a pretty good defense.
A lot of turnover. A lot of turnover on defense and real, like you said, that offensive line that was just trash to begin with.
Yeah, both offensive lines, but the defensive line was pretty good. So we'll see how that looks out. All right, on the additions, some of the big ones here. Mike Williams coming over from the Chargers. John Simpson, Morgus Moses, who played for the Ravens last year. Tyron Smith, who played for the Cowboys. Javon Kinlaw, Hassan Reddick, Olu Fashunu, Penn State offensive tackle, and one of your favorite guys of the draft, Mr. Malachi Corey. So what are we thinking about this roster as far as how it looks right now?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I think the offensive line got a major upgrade. It needed it. It couldn't have gotten much worse. Like we were talking about before we went on the air here. They had to do something to protect Aaron Rodgers, and they went out and got a couple of pretty well-known studs at offensive tackle. Did get him another wide receiver piece in Mike Williams. And then defensively brought in a couple studs up front. It'll be interesting to see if they can, work through some of the other losses as far as in the back end, but in general, I think they did a nice job of filling in holes where they had, or where they had them last year. Going back to your point about my guy Malachi Corley, he was one of my sleepers going into the draft, and I think he ended up in a really, really good spot with the New York Jets behind Garrett Wilson, behind Mike Williams. He fits nicely into that slot position.
Awesome spot. Yeah. No, I think he couldn't have ended up better. I know right now Wilson's ahead of him on the depth chart. Obviously, Williams will be, but we'll talk about Williams in a second, coming off his ACL tear. How many reps is he going to get early on? And then Xavier Gibson, a guy who flashed in the return game, but really didn't do much as a wide receiver. So definitely some opportunity. All right, let's get into those injuries because one of our biggest takeaways is this team is dangerous if they're healthy. But right now, we've got 5 offensive starters with some questions on their injury concerns. Some not as much as others. So let's talk about the fourth, of course, Mr. Aaron Rodgers, Mr. Speed Bridge himself, Mr. going to come back in 3 months from an Achilles tear, and people actually think he's fucking serious. Yeah, this was the biggest joke last year. We were telling people right away. I can't believe, man, I'm still pissed at DraftKings for offering will he play and not offering a no option. There was like will Aaron Rodgers take a snap in this season? And it was just like, yes, at plus 1,000 or something stupid.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even offer the other side, don't bet it. It's a fucking scam. So yeah, that was annoying. But anyway, as we talked about, September 11th last year, tore his Achilles. Typically a 10 to 12 month recovery process with the Achilles tear. Achilles tendon connects your calf muscles to your calcaneus, your heel. Requires surgery to repair. Typically, again, 10 to 12 months. He's got about 12 months, like just about a year to recover. So how are we feeling about Aaron Rodgers, who is getting up there in his years now?
Yeah, I mean, he was supposed to be back 4 or 5 months ago, so I don't have any concerns at all. No, I really don't have much concerns for Aaron Rodgers. Like you said, he is getting up there in years as far as the
Big
NFL
4-0.
goes. But at the same time, like he doesn't move around nearly as much as he did 10, 15 years ago. He's more of a pocket passer at this point. They did give him some support up front, so I don't expect him to be, having a bunch of bootlegs and making a ton of plays with his feet to begin with. He's got weapons out there for a reason now. So I'm not too concerned, but at the same time, going back to that age thing, other things can pop up. He's been on a kind of different training program over the last year. So, is he supporting other areas of his body the way that he needs to? We'll see. But no, I don't really have much of a concern with A-Rod.
Yeah, no, I would agree. There's definitely, anytime you come back from Achilles tear, there's some concern, there's some re-injury risk, there's some potential injury risk to other parts of the body, like you were mentioning. But even as a 40-year-old quarterback, I'm cautiously optimistic here with Rodgers. Now, like you mentioned, I don't think he's going to have his best year ever, but I think he's set up in an offense where he can succeed, can lean on the running game, and has some pretty premier wide receiver, at least in Garrett Wilson. In the fantasy realm, he's going around quarterback 20, around guys like Matthew Stafford, Deshaun Watson. Personally, I would take Stafford before Aaron Rodgers. But I would take Rodgers before Deshaun Watson. So, I think he's right. I think he's pretty fairly valued based on where he's going right now. Next guy we're going to talk about here is Elijah Vera Tucker. A really guy who has a lot of potential on that offensive line, just has trouble staying healthy. He also is coming off an Achilles tear. He tore it exactly 1 month after Aaron Rodgers on October 11th. So he's working with 11 months of recovery timeline there. How are we feeling about Elijah Vera Tucker?
Again, I'm not too terribly concerned. I think I'm probably a little bit more concerned with Elijah Vera Tucker than Aaron Rodgers, just because of, the force that he has to put through those legs to pry defensive linemen off of him, and toss them around. But at the same time, he's got the timeline there in his favor, and evidently these speed ropes or whatever that they're calling these things, speed bridges, are supposed to have you back in half the time. So he should be good to go.
Who knows if they offer that sexy product to a nasty offensive lineman? So we'll see.
That's true.
But yeah, no, somebody I want to.
Dogs don't have the privilege as the quarterbacks do.
Yeah, exactly. They're pretty privileged. Someone I want to keep an eye on going into training camp season, but I would almost expect him to be out there week 1 as well. Mike Williams coming off of an ACL tear. We talked about an ACL tear a little bit at the top of the episode. Again, major stabilizing knee ligament. He injured himself September 24th. He's got about 11 and a half months to recover, and you want around 10 to 12 months. So he's getting close to that 12-month mark where we kind of want guys to be. What are your expectations for Mike Williams?
Yeah, I think going into the season, will he start a little bit slow? Probably. But I think in general, he's in better shape than most with ACL tears. Earlier on in the season, the quicker you're going to come back the season afterwards. And he tore it in week 2, week 3 last year?
I believe he played 3 weeks last year. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's got some time on his side to, if we're going to ever say that with an ACL tear. But at the same time, kind of like we said, they do have other weapons there. They brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They have Malachi Corley. They have, Scantling went to Buffalo.
No, he's on the Bills. Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. But they do have some other wide receivers there. I think it's one of those things that again, maybe we put him on a snap count, maybe, only have him run certain routes, something like that. But I'm not too terribly concerned with Mike Williams long term.
Yeah, no, they actually came out and said that he's going to be on a similar situation to Breece Hall, where if you look at Breece Hall, they kind of had him on a snap count the first 4 weeks, and then they really let him loose week 5 and on. So, and Breece Hall played the entire season and stuff. So, you can't expect, I don't know if he's going to have Breece Hall had a hell of a season in terms of year 1 post ACL. Like, he had a very unprecedented season. So I wouldn't expect that, but Mike Williams, where he's going at wide receiver 57 around guys like Jacoby Myers and AD Mitchell, someone I would be willing to take a stab on. I think he's going to get stabilized with Rodgers. I think he's just 6'4" wide receiver. He's a big target, a big red zone target, I believe. So, someone I would be willing to take a stab on. There's definitely, high risk, high reward play there, but I kind of like Mike Williams this year, even though he's coming off the ACL tear.
Agreed.
And then a couple guys that, maybe with some less concern. We'll start with offensive tackle Morgan Moses, who's coming from the Ravens. Offensive linemen are built different. They continue to prove it. He tore his pec in week 4, and then played 14 games, including the playoff game against the Chiefs, with a torn pec muscle. Absolute stud, absolute beast. So he had surgery at the end of the season, about a 4 to 6 month recovery process. He's got about 8.5 months. Any concerns there?
I don't think so.
I mean, shit, if he could play with it torn, I'm sure he's going to be fine with it being
no doubt.
healed.
No doubt.
And then you got Breece Hall. Breece Hall, who is, again, we just talked about him. I mean, to have the season he did last year and now come in year 2 off of it, he picked up a minor lower body injury, undisclosed. Looks like he's going to be fine. He was working off on the side, going through some rehab stuff and still being out there in the mandatory minicamp. They said if it was during the season, he would be practicing. So it seems to be, he's got a month from that point till training camp. So at this point, I have no reason to kind of have any concerns with Breece Hall there. All right, let's go ahead, and we talked about some of our takeaways. Talk about some of the big concerns. I think health is the biggest thing. And for me, something I wanted to talk about was their secondary outside of Sauce Gardner. So we talked about that front 7. That front 7 is monsters. You got Jermaine Johnson, Javon Kinlaw, Quinnen Williams, Hassan Reddick, CJ Mosley, Quincy Williams, right? These are some studs. But, outside of Sauce Gardner, you got guys like Chuck Clark, Tony Adams, DJ Reed, Michael Carter II. Pretty big drop off in, at least on paper, talent from the front 7 to the back secondary there. So, again, I think this is going to be good defense, but if there was one area that they might have some holes, I think it might be that secondary there.
I would tend to agree with you there. I think in general, like you said, the front 7 is definitely by far probably one of the best front 7s in football, to be honest with you. I think, as long as guys like Jermaine Johnson and really, I think Hassan Reddick coming into New York is going to have a pretty good year. But as long as those guys are getting after the quarterback, as long as Quinnen Williams is there, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I agree. A great pass rush can very much hide a bad secondary. All right, talking about the fantasy football world, stepping into that space. Why don't you tell us why you think Malachi Corey is worth a stab there? He's going around wide receiver 74, so he's pretty cheap right now. Where do you see the path for success with Malachi Corey?
Yeah, no, I mean, even back at Western Kentucky, like he's a big-bodied wide receiver, but he's got some jiggle to him. I think he's got some yards after the catch potential. I really like him coming in to this offense in particular because you got a couple stud wide receivers outside. Stick him in the slot, have the route tree open up for him, and just get him open. And Aaron Rodgers likes those check downs. He likes to get those 5 and 10 yard passes at a time. I just think this offense is going to suit him really, really well.
No, I agree. No, I think he's a sleeper for me as well. He's basically free, someone you can pick up late in a draft who has the potential to be in a starting lineup, not very far off, right? I like how you said he's got some jiggle. Most will say wiggle, but I like the jiggle.
He's got some jiggle.
Corley, this is a jiggle man. So
yes.
But no, we talked about Mike Williams may be on a snap count to start the year. That's a way in. Xavier Gibson, I wasn't overtly impressed with him as far as outside of the return game. So no, absolutely. I really, you kind of talked me into him while we were going through the draft process. Someone I want to keep an eye on. My question for you: would you rather take Breece Hall going around overall number 9 in fantasy, or Garrett Wilson going around number 10 or 11? So who would you rather have this year? We're going to go full point PPR. Would you rather have Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall?
I would probably lean Breece Hall. But that's a tough one. I think both of them you're paying a premium for either one of them. It doesn't really matter. But I personally usually like to get running backs early, to be honest. So I think it's more just position needs for me.
I mean, he's definitely the last of that tier with him, CMC, and Bijan. As far as the real elite guys with potential to be RB1. I agree. This is no diss to Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson is a great player. I think he's got really good potential. I just think Breece Hall might do something. It's really special this year. I want to pull up something. Let's see if I can pull this up here. So there was an article that came out recently when I was looking, and it kind of gets to some of the points that we've talked about in the past. So this is some givemesport.com. So shout out to those folks. No idea who they are. But Jets running back reveals he finally feels fully recovered from an ACL tear. So this was, published not too long ago. It looks like they did an interview with him or something like that. But this is kind of what what we're telling you folks. Like, it can take up to 2 years for people to feel normal, right? There's plenty of players you can see it. Like, someone can run straight, someone can get on the field and take snaps and still not be the player that they ultimately can be to their potential and what they were before the injury. So, as good as Breece Hall looked last year, he has the potential to look even better this year and really take over that RB1 spot. He was a threat in both the running and receiving game. So, again, this kind of drives our point home with the ACL tears, where we see, even though he didn't have that kind of common year one post-ACL decline, the fact that we can get an even better Breece Hall, better offensive line, more options, I'm really excited for Breece Hall going into this 2024 season. Definitely. All right. Wet is finish us up here with the JETS, Jets. Why don't you tell us about your best bet?
Well, I'm just glad that you know how to spell Jets, to be honest. But
thank you.
I like I said, I kind of like the Jets this year. I think Hassan Reddick is going to have a big year coming over from Philly. I think he's going to, kind of keep pace with what he's been doing down there. I think he's hit this number the last 4 years. But I'm going to take his over sack total at 10.25.
Okay.
And I think that's at plus 100. So plus money. I'll take that.
I like it. Yeah, bringing the defense to play. I love that. Yes, folks, we will talk all sides of the ball here. We might leave off special teams because no one really likes the kickers. But we will definitely be talking offense, defensive line, and we will be giving out defensive props this year. So enjoy that, because that sack market, it's definitely a new market. We got tackles, interceptions, sacks. It's something you could definitely take advantage of, that we got some value, really nice value last year. So I like this Hassan Reddick play. Anything else for the Jets?
Well, the only other one I think we actually share, and that's the Jets to win the division.
Yep.
We never, share each other's picks before we really go on air, just a couple minutes before. But yeah, I was actually kind of surprised to see that you also like the Jets to win.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, like Derek was saying, we try to keep it our process is separate, and then once we put the graphic together at the end, we kind of share. But yeah, we have not overlapped a lot this year yet. So yeah, I think this is funny because I was looking at these 3 teams between Miami, Buffalo, and Jets, and it's really a 3-horse race. And so the fact that we both landed on the Jets, maybe that means something there. But yeah, plus 190 for them to win the AFC East. Their win total is at 9.5. It's pretty juiced to the over, minus 150, under plus 125. So I would almost, instead of betting that or like over 10.5 or 11 wins, I'd rather just take them to win the AFC East, to be that division, because I think this division is going to cannibalize each other a little bit. I don't think the AFC East winner is going to have anything like 12, 13 wins. I think it could be a 10-win team.
Yeah.
So I like the
This
AFC
was
East.
last year.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I like that. Couple more that I had. Malachi Corley, we talked about him a bunch. I'm going to take a dart at him to lead the rookie receivers at 40-1 again. So, that gives me Jalen Polk 40-1, Malachi Corley 40-1, and then Malik Neighbors is really where for my soul and my wallet, I hope is really what comes through at 6-1 there. I also, I talked about Breece Hall. I obviously can't go on this big rant about how I think he's going to do special things and not put some coin behind him. So Breece Hall, we use DraftKings for our odds and all of our plays here. It's just what we like to use. Breece Hall to have 1,000 rush yards, 1,000 plus rush yards and 500 plus receiving yards at plus 450. He was 6 yards away from this last year. Yeah. He had the receiving. It was the rushing. He was 6 yards away on a much worse team with much worse options. Everybody and their mother knew Breece Hall was going to get the ball on almost every play. They've got more options. They've got a much better quarterback. It should be an improved offensive line. I love this for Breece Hall. I think what makes him so special is that his ability to be dangerous in both the pass and the rush game. And I know even with Rodgers coming in, he played with Aaron Jones for a long time. Aaron Jones was well known for his ability to be a pass catcher out of the backfield. So I really like this play, and plus 450, I think that is just mispriced. The last one I got, this is my most bets for one team with a 4 here. Mike Williams, over 4.5 touchdowns at plus 115. We talked about him. I think we're getting a little bit of a discount with people not being so sure what we're going to see out of Mike Williams coming into the season. I think you want to get it now before it does look like he's trending towards playing week 1. He's, whenever he's been healthy, he's hit this number pretty easily. Again, 6'4", big body wide receiver. I know tight end Tyler Conklin, I don't have the most faith in. I think he could be their big play target in the red zone. So give me Mike Williams over 4.5 touchdowns there. All right, folks, we are halfway through, and you know what that means. We are going to tell you about some of our favorite friends and sponsors, starting with Underdog Fantasy. That is right, folks. Underdog Fantasy, where the pick 8 is now live. Create entries up to 8 picks, and Underdog will automatically double flex entries. So you can mix up to 2 picks and still win on your entry with more picks to make and extra ways to win. The excitement is higher than ever. You know what the best part is? You can win up to 325x your original amount. That is right. $1 can win you $325. You can use all the special boosts and the plays that they have. And make sure you use the promo code SGPNDOC for a special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. Look, folks, it's super easy. Download Underdog Fantasy, use promo code SGPNDOC, and deposit $250, and boom, get a free play and $250. It is just that easy. We're going to talk a little bit more about our friends over at Underdog. Look, they do a bunch of specials. UFC 303 just passed this last weekend. Great fight. Poatan, Alex Pereira. He did a lot more than half a strike. I promise you, if you did not see, he put Yuri Prochka into the freaking dirt. Amazing fight. But yeah, they run these specials all the time. And we're going to talk about one. They've also got NFL season, as the kids say, for their season-long prop. So why don't you tell us about this? What do we got here?
Yeah, I kind of like James Cook to basically continue what he's done the second half of the season last year and just run the heck out of the ball. He had all kinds of different opportunities towards the end of the season last year. I expect him to have another big year this year, but I kind of like the higher on his rushing yards more than the higher on his rushing touchdowns. Rushing touchdowns has kind of been up in the air for James Cook. So I'm going to take his higher rushing yards over on Underdog.
Yeah, I love this play. Something we'll get to when we talk about the Bills here in a second, but no, I really like James Cook this season, and I will co-sign that play as well. All right, folks, before we move on, I want to tell you about Circa Survivor and Circa Millions. Look, Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Of course, Circa contests have $0 and $0 rake. They have no rake. Circa Millions is a pick 5 teams, NFL teams against the spread each week and compete for $6 million. Or use the Survivor to get through the NFL Gauntlet to claim a $10 million prize. Sign up in person between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. So if you do not live in Las Vegas and don't want to go into the books and play, go play your Survivor pick every week, you can use a proxy. And we even have a deal at footballcontestproxy.com. Use promo code SGP to save $50. Look, always an excuse to go out to Vegas. And what better than the weekend of August 22nd to the 24th? It's the ultimate sign-up weekend. They've got some open bars, and if you go sign up, you get all these perks and things like that. Sean and Ryan will be out there. Go crack a cold one with the bosses. Tell them we said what's up and that we sent you. So, yeah, Circa Sports, always a good time. We love going to Circa. So, yeah, go.
Some good times had at Circa.
Good times had, and what's better than trying to win $10 million?
That's
so,
right.
All right, we're moving on. We are getting on to the Miami Dolphins. That is right. We are heading down to South Florida to close to the home of the Stanley Cup winners there in the Florida Panthers. Let's talk about these Miami Dolphins that had an 11-6 record, same record as the division leading Buffalo Bills, although they did not win the division due to some, essentially losses to the Bills, head-to-head record. And they have a win total of 9.5. So talking about some of their losses coming into the season, we've got a couple wide receivers here. Yeah, there's a lot. There is a lot.
A lot of turnover.
A couple wide receivers that kind of didn't really play. Cedric Wilson did a little bit. A couple linemen who did play, and Robert Hunt and Connor Williams. A lot on the defensive side of the ball. Van Ginkel was a good player. Christian Wilkins was one of their best players. Jerome Baker was a solid player. Xavier Howard, Deshaun Elliott is a good player. A lot of turnover there on the defensive side, but a lot that they brought in. Just really turnover city here. So OBJ looks like he's going to get another shot there. Jonnu Smith might be slotted in as tight end 1. You got Shaq Barrett coming to fill a hole that we're going to talk about at defensive end. Calais Campbell, Anthony Walker at linebacker coming over from Cleveland. Kendall Fuller, good cornerback, and Jordan Poyer, Marcus May, some starting safeties there, and rookie Chop Robinson, who we're going to talk about in a little bit here. So what are your major takeaways as we get into this Miami team?
Yeah, like we kind of already mentioned, shit ton of turnover. I think it whenever you have that big of an overhaul in terms of mostly defensive guys here, it may take them a little bit to fully gel. It may take them, a few weeks to really truly get going. But they brought in a lot of talent and in a lot of needed positions, whether that was just a need in terms of talent or because of injuries or losses. But I think the Miami Dolphins offense, not a whole lot of turnover there. They did lose a couple of offensive line pieces, and we'll probably talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, defensively, I think they really loaded up quite nicely, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot going out, but a lot coming in, right? So, and that offense still looks like they're going to be fast as fuck, boy. All right, let's talk about some of these injuries. 2 major injuries, really, and they're to the same position. Yep. You got both your defensive ends coming off big injuries. We'll start with Bradley Chubb there. Outside linebacker, ACL tear, tore it late, December 31st. Very late. He's only got about 8 months until the season. Again, we talk about ACLs. Like to have 10 to 12 months, closer to 11, 12 months. What are we thinking with Bradley Chubb?
Yeah, it really with both of these guys, but with Chubb, he's not going to be ready week 1. He may not be ready for week 4. He may not be ready for week 6. When with this kind of a timeline, it's really tough to see. You're really plan out when they're going to come back. I think it's one of those things where does Tua get injured week 2 and their season goes to put, and it comes to week 8 and it's like, we're 3-5. What
Are we
what am
gonna
I
roll them
doing?
out there? Yeah.
Yeah, are we gonna roll people out there or not? I think it's just a really tough spot.
No, yeah.
They did bring in a couple defensive ends to uh, put alongside Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, but with both of these injuries, timeline's not on not
No.
on their side.
Yeah, we'll talk about Phillips in a second, but definitely Bradley Chubb with just 8 months. I mean, we're talking about if he plays meaningful snaps by like week 8, I'll be impressed,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I am not expecting that at all.
No.
So we'll see with Chubb there. Not a lot of optimism with Jalen Phillips coming off an Achilles tear. Similar recovery timelines, about 10 to 12 months, although different
Yep.
injuries. He injured himself late November. He's got about 9.5 months to come back from. So, he's got a little bit more time, a month and a half more. Still some concern, but how are you feeling about Phillips?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, concern timeline's a little bit better. So I would say most likely I would look to see him week 6, maybe.
Yeah, week
I
4, week
think,
6, yeah.
yeah, I would still not probably expect him to do a whole lot the first quarter, or even really the first half of the season, because they do have 2 or 3 other defensive ends there that should be able to get to the quarterback with Shaq Barrett and incoming Chop Robinson. But again, it's kind of tough with these prolonged injuries to truly tell how quickly they're rehabbing.
Yeah, and I mean the biggest thing here is we saw it from the injury perspective, like how it happened.
Yeah.
Defensive ends need their calves and Achilles to push off the ball. That's how
Yep.
they start every single play.
Yep.
So this is not like he's injuring his pinky finger and he's barely going to ever use it. Like
Right.
this is calf muscle. This is where he generates a lot of his lower body
They
power.
get. Yep.
So I think this is one that you're going to have to be patient with both of these guys. And Shaq Barrett is a good player, and I'm going to talk about Chop Robinson here in a second. But two of your best players, your best pass rushers, proven pass rushers, are looking
Right.
at going to be out for a decent amount of time here. So that kind of might lead us into some of our bets kind of going forward. All right. We talked about the big concerns in defensive line with the injuries. Also mentioned Christian Wilkinson. I think most people don't understand how good of a player he is at defensive tackle spot. Like he reminds me of a guy, similar to Dexter Lawrence, and just is such an impact player to a team, and could just doesn't play a sexy position. So and then also what I'll point out is the age of the secondary. So I think on paper, you got Kendall Fuller, Jordan Poyer, Javon Holland, who's a young player, and Jalen Ramsey, Kadir Kahu. I mean, Ramsey, Poyer, Fuller, all guys who have been good, but they're kind of getting to the ends of their careers here. So I don't know if the age is going to catch up to them, especially with a pass rush that might not be able to get home right away. So there are some concerns there on the defense for me. Any major concerns you see outside of that?
Not really. I would say, offensively, like we said a little bit ago, they're going to be fast. McDaniel's going to draw up something crazy, get somebody in open field and put up some points. Defensively is going to be the question, just like it was last year.
Yep.
How well can they hold up? And I just don't see the Miami Dolphins having much of a different season as last year. I think if anything, because of, like you said, that aging defense, some of the injuries that they do have, I just don't see them moving much, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I mean that's one of my big takeaways. Like, are they better? Are they a better team than last year? Offense, pretty much running it back. Guys are a year older, which maybe an A-Chain Chase helps him, but everyone else, not really doesn't really help you to be a year older. Still really didn't address the tight end position with Jonnu Smith. Maybe better than Durham Smythe, but how much? Offensive line, still some questions there. But the defense arguably got worse. So it's tough to project them as being a better team for next season. We're heading to the fantasy space real quick. I've got a question. Would you rather take Raheem Mostert at running back 28 around his value, or Devon A-Chain at running back 7? So would you rather take A-Chain a lot earlier or get a guy like Mostert later in the game?
I'm taking Mostert every day in the week and twice on Sunday, to be honest with you. I think A-Chan, he's a special dude.
Yep.
But I think he averaged like 7 yards a carry.
That's
And yes, they are expecting him to, have a little bit heavier workload this year. That's not sustainable, especially when the offensive line probably got worse.
Yep.
So I think I'm taking Raheem Mostert. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I'm also going to take Raheem Mostert as well. And I'll talk about him in a second, but he's just, he's an older player, right? We look at him and, Achane is just 22. I think Mostert is 32. But when you look at Raheem Mostert, he really, when you look at his career, he did not play much at all in the first, 5 or 6 years of his career.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 2018 where he really started to get, and in 2018, he only had 34 carries. For most of this was the first time in his career he's got over 200 carries, and he put up over 1,000 yards. Last year, he had 181. He had 891 yards. Like, although he's been in the league for a while, he does not have a lot of that wear and tear you see with a lot of these running backs. So I think a lot of people are just looking at the age thing, and people love explosive players, especially the fantasy community. They just see the guy and they're like, oh, he's going to be the best. Achane has not shown he can stay healthy yet, so we'll see how that goes.
Well,
I got some injury concerns, and I just think even when Achane was healthy, Mostert still got carries. I think
and I think part of that's like McDaniel's offense it's so complex. There's so many moving pieces. They're constantly putting people in motion and things. As a vet, Raheem Mostert can figure that out much quicker and be able to grasp that playbook probably better than Achane at this point in his career. And like we said, Mostert doesn't have that wear and tear on his body. He carried the bulk of the carries last year. I'm taking him, 2 or 3 rounds later than Achane. And probably seeing very similar production wise.
Yeah, you could get him probably 4 or 5 rounds later. Yeah, 28. So I agree with you. I'm glad we're on the same page there. The other thing, real quick, it's the question of who's their third target going to be. Last year, it was very much, Hill and Waddle, and then Durham Smythe had like 400 yards. He was their third target. You go into the year with OBJ at wide receiver 90, Jonnu Smith at tight end 25, and Durham Smythe not even on the board. So, it's tough as far as who's really going to get a lot of targets. They use the running backs a lot. I don't think OBJ is going to really, I don't think he's going to have a terrible year, but I can't really see him having anything really worth something in fantasy. And then Jonnu Smith is interesting. I don't really know if I don't see if I project him as a tight end 1. Again, Durham Smythe was their third leading receiver last year. Are they going to be splitting time? I know a lot of people are just penciling in Jonnu Smith to just take over, but I don't know how true that is based on how Smythe did. Smythe had actually some good connections with Tua. He paid out pretty nice on his alt receiving a couple times last year. So we'll see, but something you want to monitor in training camp and kind of look to see who that third target's going to be. Yep. All right, we're going to head over to some actionable stuff, some best bets. Is it my turn, your turn? Who goes first here?
I think it's your turn.
All right. I'm going to lead us off here. Raheem Mostert, over 705 rushing yards. We just talked about him. He's hit this his last 2 years. He's only been playing really his last 6 years, and this was his first year with over 200 carries, and he just had like 209. I think both of Achane and Mostert are going to get a lot of carries. I think Mostert is going to be a guy who's going to be more reliable. I think, and he's still got some speed. Don't discredit Mostert. He's no Devon Achane, but he will run between the tackles, and he can bust one if there is a hole available. So I like Mostert to hit his over. I also like the Dolphins to miss the playoffs at plus 130. We talked about how this is a 3-horse race. I just think they're the one. I just think they're the one that falls out there. I think Buffalo and the Jets are a better team than them. I think that defense has the potential to be a little leaky this year, which may be good for fantasy for the offense. But I think that defense, with the lack of a pass rush, may have some trouble. Now, I will say this market, at least I can't see it in Virginia, but this market hasn't come out yet, I don't think. But Chop Robinson to lead rookies in sacks or him as defensive rookie of the year to me would be a very intriguing play. We just talked about it. You got Bradley Chubb out for likely most of the year. You've got Jalen Phillips likely not going to be ready for week 1. Shaq Barrett's going to be on one side. You're going to have, Chop Robinson on the other. You got Zach Seiler in the middle. You got Calais Campbell in the middle. You got enough guys that he can really, he's I mean, this guy wearing like a 4.5 40. Like, he is an athletic freak.
Yeah.
I could really see him, getting some sacks in this defense that's going to be really needing some sacks. You got to imagine it's got to be a pretty juicy number for someone who, as far as defensive rookie of the year. So look out for that market when it becomes available. I really do like Chop Robinson. All right, what do we like for Miami side of the ball there?
Yeah, I as much as I've been supporting and giving love to Miami's offense, I really think they probably will take a slight step back in the passing game. So Tua has only hit this number one time, and that's 25.5 passing touchdowns.
Okay. Yeah.
He's only hit it one time. It was last year. But again, they're basically running everything back just with another year of age. Offensive line probably got a little bit weaker. We know how Tua's injury concerns have popped up in the past.
Yep.
Do they again? So there's a few different lines of thinking when it comes to this, but I really just think that Miami's offense, somebody's going to catch up to them, and once one or two defenses catch up to that scheme, I think Tua is going to have a little bit harder time. So I'm going to take his under passing touchdowns.
No, I like it. You always got an out with an injury there with Tua. We've seen him; he's prone to get those. And they also had 27 touchdowns on the ground. So, they could still put up a decent amount of points and him not hit that number there. I know he hit it last year, but I think he really had, he led the lead in passing. So I would almost expect him to have more with how many passing yards he has. So, it's obviously something that could definitely regress to the mean there. Anything else for the Dolphins?
That's it for the Dolphins.
All right. We are moving on to the final team. Before we do that, let me tell you folks about Rhythm. That is right, Rhythm. If you're betting on player props, then you need to download Rhythm. Rhythm is the go-to sports betting tool that transforms complex data into actionable insights, empowering bettors with smarter, data-driven decisions. Unlike other platforms, Rhythm combines advanced predictive analytics with an intuitive user experience, making betting both easy and enjoyable. Rhythm's predictive models were born up from the brains of MIT data scientists and quants with over 3 years of data that help drive you to better AI-backed betting decisions. Rhythm projections have been red hot for the WNBA, for golf. Again, if you're looking to get into something to, feed that degen inside of you, get a little bit of stake in the game, head on over to Rhythm and claim your free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right.
Did your IQ just go up like 5 points?
I was going to say, always feel a little bit smarter reading the Rhythm there. Look, you got a little QR code you can scan. Look how fancy we are over here at Sports Gambling Podcast Network. That's just beautiful. All right. We are talking about Buffalo. Hide your wife, hide your tables. We're talking about the Buffalo Bills out here. All right. So you're 11-6 defending AFC East champion Buffalo Bills. Let's talk about some of these losses that they've had to this team here. Quite a bit. That wide receiver room looks a bit different. Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, gone. Leading receivers from last year, out the door. They've got some changes on the offensive line in starting center Mitch Morse, some defensive ends in Leonard Floyd, Jack Larson. And that secondary is going to look different. Tre'Davious White, after an ACL and an Achilles injury, off to L.A. Micah Hyde, free agent. Jordan Poyer, down to Miami. Some additions here. Curtis Samuel, who's kind of have an interesting career coming out of the Ohio State University. MBS there. Lyle Collins, Daquan Jones, Deion Jones, Mike Edwards, and Keon Coleman, the very popular Florida State Seaman Hole coming out of the draft. So what is the initial takeaways here? A team that looks a little bit different on the offensive side of the ball, especially on the outside.
Yeah, no, yes, they definitely look different roster-wise, but they looked different those last 5 or 6 weeks of the last regular season.
In a good way.
In a good way. They finished the regular season off 5-0 to barely make into the playoffs, and then they went on a little bit of a playoff run. But as far as the offseason goes, big loss in Stephon Diggs, but at the same time, they really didn't use him a whole lot in the second half of the season.
Down the stretch,
Couple,
yeah.
couple offensive linemen taken off, but then defensively, I think is where they've lost the most, especially in that secondary. You know, they had a fairly in general, a pretty good secondary that just, I guess, I don't know, just parted ways. I don't know
Yeah, it's
why
gonna
they
look different.
necessarily get rid of Micah Hyde, excuse me, or Jordan Poyer, if it's a money thing or what. But
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely going to look different, right? So you get rid of Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. You do have, Rasul Douglas playing really well. He played really well for the Packers. Taron Johnson, I think, is the best nickel corner in the league. Christian Benford is a really good young player. You got Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards. I just think they got younger. I
yeah,
don't necessarily know if they got worse, actually. When I look at it here, those are some really good young players. They definitely is going to be different. Not used to what we're used to seeing in Buffalo. And we do want to mention that little bit of a mix up on the graphic there. There are no QB1 questions in Buffalo. We missed up on our graphic there. So biggest takeaways is offensive changes. Are they going to miss Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis? And that secondary is going to look really different.
right.
All right. Let's talk about some of these injuries here for this 11-6 Buffalo Bills. Matt Milano is the big one, coming off of that nasty leg fracture in the London game. So he had a tibial plateau fracture, which is essentially your tibia is one of your lower leg bones, the bigger lower leg bone, and that connects to your femur and that connection point. And there was a fracture there. He also had an MCL grade 3 tear, your medial collateral ligament. So looking at about a 4 to 6 month recovery process. He got injured on October 11th, so he has 11 months to the season. Any concerns with Matt Milano?
Not really. I think, like you said, I mean, tibial plateau fractures, it's the bone, right? As long as we go through that general 6 to 8 week timeline, that's going to be completely fine. MCLs usually respond fairly well, especially over that timeline. I mean, you got 11 months to truly rehab and give as much support to that knee as possible. I really don't have much concern with Milano.
Yeah, no, I think, the biggest concern I think we would have heard about if this was anything kind of worried about a chronic issue or something
Right.
degenerative as far as long-term stuff.
Yep.
But I think that would have been flushed out by now. Other guys I want to talk about, Mike Edwards, safety from Kansas City, who played significant minutes for them, especially down the stretch and even in the Super Bowl there. He wasn't
Mhm.
I don't think he was technically a starting safety, but they played with 3 safeties a lot on that defense. So he had a lot of playing time. He picked up a minor shoulder injury, expected to be around 3 to 4 week injury. Picked it up May 22nd. So he's got plenty of time to be back for training camp. Not a lot of concerns there. And the other guy I want to talk about, Khalil Shakir, picked up a lower body injury, kind of limped off last day of mandatory minicamp on the 11th of June. Appears to be minor. He posted an Instagram working out with the Bills wide receiver, one of their older wide receivers. So I don't expect either of those guys to really have a lot of concern going into the season. I will ask you, though, talking about Khalil Shakir, he's wide receiver 54 around there, going around there in fantasy. He's actually going last out of Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, the slated starting wide receivers. Who would you take at their value? So you got Keon Coleman at wide receiver 43, Curtis Samuel at wide receiver 50, or Khalil Shakir at wide receiver 54, all slated to be starters. And Shakir is the only one with the team, was on the team last year.
Yeah, I think I would probably lean Curtis Samuel, to be honest with you, just because of his versatility. He's a vet, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit, but I really don't like Keon Coleman to do a whole lot this year, to be honest with you. Even though
Yeah.
he was 33rd overall, something like early second round,
Yeah, early
wide
second round. Yeah.
receiver.
Yeah.
I think there was some concerns going into the draft with Keon Coleman, and we'll see. But I think there's some major concerns, even just coming out of the Buffalo Bills, that he's got some work to do to be ready for this season. Khalil Shakir, like you said, only one returning. But yeah, I guess it may just be a little biased towards a former Buckeye, but I would probably say Curtis Samuel.
The bias is showing. But no, I think that's fair. I think it's for me, it's between him and Shakir. I kind of could be a coin flip. I probably lean Shakir just because, he's shown to be explosive, a little bit younger of a player and has that chemistry with Josh Allen, but not really guys I'm like super targeting. I don't expect this Buffalo offense, like the wide receivers, to be a huge part of this offense. I could see all three guys being mixed in, but no one really taking over that wide receiver one alpha role, and it just kind of being, some spreading the love there.
Yeah, I really think, like you said, I think this wide receiver group is just going to be kind of a turnover, with those three guys, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. You throw Chase Claypool in there, I guess.
Just a rotation of
as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be mostly a rotation until they figure it out. So
I agree. Yeah, no, I agree. Guys I would be targeting on this team in fantasy. I mean, Josh Allen is the quarterback number one, and I think that's fair, right? I don't, he's clearly got ability. He's got a cannon for an arm. Obviously he does make boneheaded mistakes and some turnovers there, but in the fantasy, you'll take those bad plays with a lot of good plays there. And he had 15 rushing touchdowns compared to James Cook, who had 2 touchdowns, which is an insane ratio compared to like your starting running back, who was good. I mean, he had over 1,000 yards, and to only have 2 compared to 15. So talk about it. The guy just gobbles up touchdowns. And we talked about it. We really think that this team is going to go in with a 2 tight end set, run the ball, use Josh Allen, use his legs, kind of almost like a Ravens offense before Todd Monken there with Greg Roman. A lot of run heavy stuff. So Allen is someone who's a quarterback one, so you're gonna have to be paying to get him. But I definitely understand that case. Dalton Kincaid, I think, is a guy who is going tight end 5, and I think he's got the potential to finish tight end 1 this year. I think he's really going to be their wide receiver 1 for this offense. We saw him come on last year. What he did in the past couple of weeks. I really like this kid coming out of Utah. I think he's got a lot of potential. And I'm a James Cook guy as well, going RB13. We talked about his higher on the underdog play with his rushing potential. He's also got a pretty good receiving potential, 450, 4 touchdowns last year. So even though he didn't have a lot of rushing touchdowns, he doubled it up on his receiving touchdowns. So anybody else you're looking at fantasy-wise, anybody you're looking to fade, or you're kind of lockstep there?
No, I think, like you said, I think Josh Allen is the dude there, especially with his rushing ability and ability to get in the end zone. Wide receiver, it's kind of a shit show, basically. Just see who sticks that day. But no, I think, like you said, Dalton Kincaid is probably going to be their wide receiver 1, to be honest with you, coming out of the tight end position. Cook, you're a little bit higher on than I am, probably. But overall, I think the Buffalo Bills will be the Buffalo Bills on offense.
Yeah. All right. So 11-6 last year, 10.5 win total. Over is plus 130, under minus 155. What is your best bets right now for this Buffalo Bills team?
So, and this is another one that we actually think alike on, is Keon Coleman to go under 725.5. Like we said,
go Gators.
Had some concerns going into the draft. I think Brandon Beam, the Bills GM, came out and basically said he's got some work to do as far as learning the offense, learning the playbook. Can we play him in the X? Can we play him in the slot? They're trying to figure out Keon Coleman as much as he's trying to figure out them. So I just don't see where any of these wide receivers are going to have a giant, 1,000-yard season. So I think Keon Coleman's probably going to go under 725.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I have the same play here on my end. I mean, I think we talked about it. There's so many different ways to get here, right? One, you got a rookie wide receiver, a wide receiver who wasn't even the best wide receiver on his team. When you're talking about the JJ Wilson there, I thought was a little bit more of a playmaker there for the Florida State Seminoles. But it's just, we see it every year. There's a guy who is completely likable. Seems like a cool guy. Everybody saw the interview with that process where they asked him, I'm not Tiger Woods. I'm Tiger. I wish he could. He's a funny dude. Obviously, no, it looks like he's really cool, right? People want to root for him, but I think this is a crazy number. I can't even believe has the same odds as Malik Neighbors to lead rookie receivers in receiving yards. That's insane to me, because I don't think this offense, like you said, is going to produce anything close to 1,000-yard wide receiver unless it's Dalton Kincaid. I think James Cook's going to get a lot through the backfield. And I think they're going to, I think you got three guys there in Coleman, Shakir, and Samuel that they're like ceiling is 700, more like 500 to 600 range there.
Sure.
So I am playing him under 725.5 receiving yards at -110. Gabe Davis at wide receiver 2 went for 746 last year. And again, totally different offense. And Gabe Davis is a much different wide receiver than Keon Coleman. Gabe Davis is a vertical threat. Keon Coleman is a much more of a possession wide receiver. He's got some good hands, but I don't expect him to be flying down the field. All right, what is your other bet for the Buffalo Bills?
The only other thing is for the Bills to actually miss the playoffs this season.
Ooh.
We kind of forget that it took them to win 5 straight games in the NFL to make the playoffs last year. And they lost some on the defense. They lost a couple wide receivers, I didn't see as many additions as I would have liked. That, like we've continued to say, this is going to be a different looking Buffalo Bills. And I just don't think there's going to be enough spark to actually get into the playoffs. And part of that's due to some of the other teams in the AFC. There probably will be one or two, or at least one, obviously, if not 2 or 3 coming out of the AFC North, maybe a couple coming out of the AFC South. The AFC is just loaded, and I just don't see 3 teams coming out of this division.
Yeah. Okay. So we got a little bit of I think the Dolphins are the odd men out. You think the Bills are, but we both think the Jets are going to win this division, which is a scary place to be, trusting in the New York Jets. But hey,
no doubt.
The 24-4 season. Last play I've got here. Give me Dalton Kincaid over 750.5 receiving yards at -110. He had 673 last year, and he really didn't start coming on until the end of the season. We talked about it. I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for this team. I really do. I think it's going to be a lot of James Cook, Josh Allen on the ground, and hitting Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and sprinkling in those wide receivers for some play action and some stuff down the field. So that is where we are, folks. We are going to wrap up with some of our best bets as far as doing a nice little recap, and then we are going to get the hell out of here and shoot some fireworks. So we've got the best bets. Why don't you read yours off for us there, Derek?
Yep. So I got New England to have the fewest wins in the NFL. Drake May to go under 2,400 passing yards. The New York Jets to win the division. And Hassan Reddick to go over 10.5 or 10.25, sacks. Tua to go under 25.5 passing touchdowns. Keon Coleman to go under 725 receiving yards. And then the Bills to miss the playoffs.
All right. And then on the other side, I've got Jalen Polk, most rookie receiving yards at 40-1. Jacoby Brissett to be the week 1 starter at -300. Malachi Corley to lead rookie receiving yards at 40-1 as well. Jets to be the AFC East champs at +190. Breece Hall to have 1,000+ rush yards and 1,000+ rush yards and 500+ receiving yards at +450. Mike Williams over 4.5 touchdowns at +115. Raheem Mostert over 700.5 rush yards at -110. Dolphins to miss the playoffs at +130. Keon Coleman under 725.5 receiving yards at -110. And Dalton Kincaid over 750.5 receiving yards at -110. All right, folks, we did it. We made it through the AFC East. At this point now, we have talked about the NFC South, the NFC East, the NFC North, the NFC West, and now the AFC East. We're coming at you next time with, I believe, the AFC South. Goal is to get all these done, recorded out there for you good people before training camp starts, because once training camp starts, the news is going to be flowing hot and heavy, and we're going to have all these updates for you. But there's no better way to make sure you are as up to date as possible by getting all this information here with your friendly Degen Docs here. So listen, folks, you know what they say. Well, before I do this, you got anything for the good people before we head out of here?
No, I mean, make sure we're getting these plays in before the season. We're dropping locks like lollipops out here. So,
Yes, sir.
pick your favorite ones, throw them out there. And if you like what you're hearing, follow, like, share, all
Look at
that kind of
that.
stuff. Send it to your aunt, send it to your best friend,
To your
send it
auntie. I
to
like the auntie's
exactly,
definitely gonna the Degen Docs. Hey auntie, let me tell you about
exactly,
I got a doctor for you here.
exactly. While you're sitting around eating a glizzy tomorrow during 4th of July, just start sharing the name.
Oh man, no, we do appreciate it as a new show. Yeah, any likes, comments, tell us things you want to see. We're still workshopping it. We're just
Yep,
trying to get it right for the NFL season. So if you appreciated hanging out with us,
definitely.
cheers to you. I know my glass is empty, but cheers to you all, folks. We're having a blast here. So you know what they say: a lock a day keeps the bookie away, and we've got the prescription for you for the Degen Docs. I'm the Degen Doc. He is Professor Locks himself, and we are out of here. What's up, Degens? Doc here. As a proud member of the U.S. Army and a lover of football, sometimes those two things cross over on here. But as you probably already know, as a lowly captain, these are just my opinions. These are not opinions that are representative of the entire DoD or the U.S. Army. The same thing goes for any references to any commercial products or hyperlinks. Again, that does not constitute an endorsement from the DoD or the Army. I hope you enjoyed the show, and as always, let it ride, baby.